Safety is supposed to be the top priority in aviation, but is everything done to prevent aviation catastrophes? Accident investigators search every single part from a wreck. Which role did it play in an accident? Where is it coming from, and through which hands did it pass during its history? Who maintained and repaired it? Was everything done according to regulations? Only when complete traceability can be assured can a part be used on board a plane. Since January 2002, the Italian investigation operation Latin Phoenix has alarmed the industry. Inferior, unapproved aircraft parts are believed to have passed through safety nets. And now, they endanger the life of millions of passengers worldwide. Safety, the top priority in aviation. The case Latin Phoenix leads us to Sardinia in Italy. The track of the forgers begins here. The international airport of Olbia in Sardinia. In the early dusk hours of April 23, 1995, the Italian regional carrier Meridiana was a victim of a theft. The thieves targeted the part bins of Meridiana. On the shelves, hundreds of expensive aircraft components ready to be used in Meridiana jets. At about 1800 hours, 3 masked men entered the premises. At gunpoint, hundreds of electrical components were stolen. Value, $1.5 million. It seems the thieves knew exactly what they were looking for. The thieves and their expensive loot escaped by car to Budoni, a nearby beach town. Here, in Via Garibaldi, the leads are lost. Meridiana receives compensation by their insurer. Shortly thereafter, the stolen parts materialize in this house. The thieves were identified as herdsmen. 2 are now in jail, but the organizers of the crime are still unknown. The insurer Generali, after settling with Meridiana, now owner of the aircraft parts, quickly wants to sell them. In Enzo Fregonese they find a buyer. He takes them on a commission basis for 1/3 of their value. Fregonese, owner of the Roman company Pen Aviation, is a broker dealing in used aircraft parts. He also has good business relations with Meridiana for years. For a few weeks the events remain subject for gossip in Olbia, but then soon become forgotten. Five years later, the authorities are tipped that Fregonese might have been one of the organizers of the theft. The prosecutor of the Tempio Pausania court thus reopens the case. The biggest investigation into unapproved parts is initiated under the codename Operation Latin Phoenix. The hangars of Pen Aviation at Campino Airport in Rome. On April 11, 2001, a special police unit of the Italian financial police, Guardia di Finanza, busts Enzo Fregonese and his employees. The officers systematically raid the place, and within the paperwork they find indications of fraudulent activities. They are unable to link Fregonese to the Meridiana theft, but nevertheless they find over 40,000 spare parts in the shelves. Many are stored contrary to proper procedures and regulations. In the back of the hangar they find a workshop where parts have been illegally enhanced. Parts are seized, the prosecutor seals off the hangar. Former Alitalia captain Arturo Radini and his colleague Dr. Vittorio Floridia, an aeronautical engineer, are experts. They work for the Italian prosecutor. When we first meet with them in spring 2002, they have already spent over a year trying to shed some light into the dark activities of Pan Aviation. Both answer to Dr. Renato Perinu, the lead prosecutor in this case. Perinu, a successful former mafia prosecutor, brings a lot of know-how from organized crime cases into this investigation. But it seems that the international aviation industry would like to have this case appear as an isolated Italian problem.
Il fatto che ci sia stato un interscambio continuo testimonia che il problema non è solo dell'Italia, anzi abbiamo trovato grande sensibilità da parte dei partner e delle altre autorità europee da subito, come le ho detto in precedenza, e anche questo significa che il problema non è solo dell'Italia. Piccolo merito dell'Italia potrebbe essere quello di aver suscitato e di aver messo alla luce invece l'esistenza di questo problema.
Also, the evidence secured by Perinu and his team show the extent of the problem and the dangers, not only for Italy. Seized aircraft parts. Among them are those from a crashed aircraft. The plane was submerged in water for several days. This fact Pan Aviation did not mention because nobody wants to buy accident parts. Life vests for children, manufactured in 1966. More than 30 years old, they should be thrown out. Investigators found hundreds of part tags that have one commonality. The respective parts were defective and should have been removed from service. But all these parts are missing. A compressor disc from a jet engine. And 2 pieces of paper. One reads that the part has been overhauled by Iberia and is good for installation. The other, original tag, says that the part is beyond limits and should be scrapped.
I told before, we are talking about stress or threatened corrosion. Ora, una situazione di questo genere, come per esempio questi sono fori che sono strappati, elongati.
Di un compressore, magari.
Sì, abbiamo trovato anche queste sono l'inlet guideline della crack, anche vistosi, e queste parti che sono notevolmente di scarto.
Such defective parts installed on an aircraft can lead to a disaster. This is shown clearly in the 1995 example of the US low-cost carrier ValueJet. While taxiing, such a compressor disc failed and disintegrated, sending metal shrapnel through the fuselage. 7 people, including a flight attendant, were seriously injured. The plane caught fire and the 55 passengers escaped via the emergency slides. Once airborne, this would have been worse.
Una sedia elettrica e trancia tutto quello che trova lungo la sua strada. Quindi se ci sono dei passeggeri seduti, se c'è un motore, fusoliera, tubi idraulici, sega tutto e va molto lontano perché questo viene strappato a 20 o 30.000 giri.
Sì, è molto.
Quindi molto veloce.
With such cutouts from original documents carrying the name of prominent airlines, Pan Aviation forged the required records for spare parts. Serial numbers were falsified, giving the parts a new identity. It now becomes a bogus part, but the original signatures remain and cheat the buyer. A clear attack against flight safety.
L'attività di indagine cura in questa fase esclusivamente i reati concernenti il pericolo per la sicurezza del volo.
Once installed, a bogus part can become a deadly threat. Arturo Radini, an experienced accident investigator, knows that too well.
Ci sono due tipi di pericoli fondamentali. Una che una parte non approvata, una bogus part, causi una avaria in un aeroplano, anche un'avaria drammatica o non risolvibile. Per esempio il caso dell'aeroplano appartenente a una compagnia del nord Europa che per delle bogus parts montate, bulloni di supporto dell'EPU, è precipitato.
8th of September 1989. Partner Flight 394 takes off from Norway's Oslo airport for a short trip to Hamburg, Germany. On board, 55 passengers and a crew of 5. At around 1600 hours, the plane disappears from the radar. The plane crashed into the North Sea. The wreck is secured and reassembled in a hangar in Oslo. 3.5 years later, the Accident Commission concludes that the vertical stabilizer loosened and ripped off, an event initiated by a faulty mount of the auxiliary power unit in the tail. The mount did not correspond with the manufacturer's specifications. Also, the bolts that fastened the fin to the fuselage were of inferior strength and failed. Bogus parts worth not even $100 and responsible for the death of 55 people. Leif Stavik lost his brother in the crash. We talked to him shortly after the release of the final report.
It's criminal. It's criminal. And if you draw the perspective into the future, is there a chance that there will be other airplanes flying around with bogus parts? Of course, we know there are airplanes flying around with bogus parts today. And if we could learn something from this terrible accident, it should be the need for focusing on this bogus industry. We know that there are companies providing old airplanes with bogus parts. Who are they? Where do they come from? Where do we find them?
All around the world, old airplanes are cannibalized. These parts may be reused. Used parts are cheaper than new ones, and original parts may not be always available. Used parts can be reused when very strict and often costly overhaul is performed at specially licensed repair facilities. Here, strict procedures by the manufacturer and aviation authorities must be followed. Only after such stringent overhaul will the part get a new airworthiness certificate, together with a complete traceability records authorizing reinstallation on a plane. This procedure is compulsory for parts with limited lifetime. Back to Italy. We meet the experts at Radini's home near Milan. Every weekend they go through the seized Pan Aviation paperwork. They compare purchase orders, invoices and parts documentations and try to establish commonalities. Often they find bold forgeries within such documents.
E le quantità sono anche diverse. 1 e lui ci ha messo 31. The original attachment to the procurement contract is shown in this position terminal with a different part number. If you go to the forged document accompanying the shipment of this material to air stocks, in the very same position you will find rod actuating. It means that the original has been whited out and the new part number and denomination has been written on top. This is a clear example of the documents have been manipulated.
Because by our point of view, everything that arrived in the States are suspected and approved parts because we cannot achieve every document.
After 9 months of intensive research, it becomes clear. For over a decade, Pan Aviation has distributed bogus parts across the globe. Informed about these findings, the Italian aviation authority ENAC alerts its counterparts. In January 2002, ENAC warns. ENAC concluded that any part distributed by Pan Aviation has been potentially altered and should be considered unairworthy. The agency requests ENAC would appreciate any information regarding the discovery of the above referenced parts from any source and the action taken to remove the parts from service or stock. The Swiss maintenance company SR Technics finds Pan Aviation parts installed in the brake system of the Swiss MD-11 fleet. The company informs the Swiss authority, the FOCA, but the agency does not relay this information until today. Are bogus parts installed on German jets? The LBA informs ENAC about its findings. But the FAA, the US Federal Aviation Administration, seems to have no interest in supporting the search for the Italian parts. In their note, the feedback requirement is missing.
As to the similar EUPN, an approved part notification that was released by FAA short after, 3 or 4 days, we haven't got any feedback about where are those parts, are still they flying, have been segregated, have been secured. We don't have the slightest idea.
Dulles near Washington, D.C. Here the FAA maintains their suspected unapproved parts office. The head of the office, Ken O'Reilly, agreed to an interview, but the appointment is cancelled on short notice by the FAA's PR department. It seems that the FAA fears an interview might trigger too much public attention. The FAA is the most powerful aviation authority in the world, and the US has the biggest aviation industry in the world. FAA regulations set the standards for most other national counterparts. The FAA is responsible for both air safety and for promoting the aviation industry. Unfortunately, the FAA tends to favor the needs of the industry rather than the safety aspect. Upper and middle managers of this agency are recruited mainly from the very same industry they are supposed to regulate, and once retiring from their FAA duties, they often get lucrative consulting contracts within Airbus or Boeing. We meet with Mary Schiavo. A lawyer and professor at The Ohio State University, she served in the US government until 1996. As independent Inspector General of the Department of Transportation, she focused on fighting the bogus parts problem. For more than 5 years, her agents investigated many cases, including those within the FAA. And she often proved to the agency and its employees that the safety of the flying public was neglected. Sharp tongues for many years have found a cynical nickname for the FAA.
FAA is called the Tombstone Agency because the saying goes they regulate by counting tombstones, meaning that they will not act and will not make improvements for safety or security unless a certain number of people die. And in fact, they have economic calculations which tell them that the value of the lives lost must exceed the cost to the industry of the safety improvement. So they add up the value, it's now 3 million. So they multiply the number of dead times 3 million now, and if the cost of the safety improvement is more than the body count times 3 million, they don't do it.
Since the early 90s, there are numerous reports of parts being stolen, especially in the United States. Unofficial estimates value the yearly damage around $400 million. Spare part thieves are unscrupulous. In December 1995, an American Airlines Boeing 757 crashed on approach to Cali in Colombia. The thieves were already in action while rescuers still tried to recover victims from the wreckage. American felt forced to publish pages of lists containing serial numbers of hundreds of these stolen components, none of which have resurfaced. It is believed that they have been altered and they are flying today with forged documents and histories. In contrast to the reluctant FAA, investigators of the FBI and the Office of Inspector General are getting serious when it comes to bogus parts. Since 1996, about 160 convictions have been achieved. The punishments remain at the low side. Only some minor prison terms and fines. airlines and authorities both seem to be afraid of losing the trust of the flying public. Therefore, they remain silent about such cases where unscrupulous profit makers are risking the lives of passengers and crews. And despite accidents have to be investigated, the problem of bogus parts still does not get the appropriate attention. Therefore, it appears that bogus parts are not a concern for accidents. The FAA has underlined this thesis very successfully with a little trick.
FAA maintained that no aviation accident or no aviation crash had been caused by a bogus part. So we went to the National Transportation Safety Board databases and found several dozen accidents caused by bogus parts. So we got our evidence right out of the National Transportation Safety Board. So instead of saying, oh, I guess we were wrong, we better get to work on this problem, the FAA went to the NTSB and asked them to delete that category from their indices. So no longer could you find the accidents caused by suspected unapproved parts or bogus parts. So that category disappeared.
A prominent case reveals the FAA's attitude as a farce when investigators seized bogus parts right off the US President's jet Air Force One. They were installed in nothing less than the fire extinguishing system. The identified suspects pleaded guilty and were sentenced to 30 years in jail. Perhaps in the light of such facts, US Congress finally became active and created a new law. Now, criminals may be fined millions of dollars and get lifetime prison terms if a person gets killed due to the use of bogus parts. But the FAA still wants to make everybody believe that there is no problem. Until today, they did not respond to the Italian requests.
The FAA is kind of reluctant to help anyone where the fallout might be cleaning up a problem. It might cost the airlines some money, it might cost the industry money, and it might lead to a criminal investigation and criminal conviction. And for the FAA, neither is helpful. They were not supportive of criminal investigations and convictions. They were not supportive of regulating brokers, and they certainly weren't supportive of cleaning up the bogus parts in the industry because they feared it would cost airlines money.
It's like being slapped in the face. I mean, we had a feeling once the Norwegian report was on the table in '93 that now the international aviation industry would come together and see to it that this trade was stopped once and forever. But after some months, I think it seemed that the interest faded away.
September 2002, we travel to Italy again. For months we have been trying to talk to the main suspect in the Pen Aviation case, Enzo Fregonese. He lives and works here in Via Cesare Pavese. Finally, we are successful. We would like to know how he responds to the allegations against him and his company.
Per cui non posso altro che considerarmi una vittima delle circostanze. Spero solo che si vada il più velocemente possibile a un chiarimento. Smetterò di essere vittima soltanto allora.
Queste sono le falsificazioni.
We confront him with his falsifications.
Non sono identiche.
IST 1958. Sì, questo sì.
C'è un commento per questo?
No, non riesco a commentarlo, non ne capisco il motivo o la ragione.
Ma voi ha mai fatte queste falsificazioni?
No, quello che è stato fatto, questo è materiale Italia, è stato fatto perché è stato fatto. E perché era giusto e possibile farlo, non c'era nessun riferimento.
Fregonese is looking for excuses.
Sono stato diciamo truffato dalla ditta che me l'ha venduto e l'ho girato, ma in perfetta buona fede. Comunque non ritengo che queste cose siano accadute, per cui non ritengo di aver causato un pericolo
Enzo Fregonese shows no signs of remorse and awareness of his wrongdoings. He has been in the aviation business for 54 years. Proudly, he shows us a computer printout of his customer data. Among many smaller companies, we find big names such as Lufthansa or Northwest Airlines. And according to this printout, even the current #1 aircraft manufacturer is among his customers, Airbus Industrie. Many of the Italian regional carriers purchased their parts for years from Pan Aviation, among them Air One, a partner of Lufthansa. Air One was forced to remove hundreds of components from aircraft and check them. Fregonese's activities also caused headaches for the Italian government-owned airline Alitalia, which did a lot of business with him. Rome International Airport, Fiumicino, backyard. In 1996, Alitalia retired 6 Airbus A300s. But due to traceability problems with their parts, they could not be sold. The aircraft remained rotting on the tarmac. In summer 2001, they got a new owner. Together with the American parts broker Dan Batchelor, Fregonese bought the 6 airplanes for $1.5 million. The plan was to disassemble the aircrafts and ship the parts to the US for overhaul and recertification, and then sell them for a profit. Fregonese requests permission for disassembly from ENAC, which was granted in December 2001. But things somehow became messed up before, as confirmed by ENAC.
We have discovered that they start to disassemble the aircraft 2 months before our approval for dismantling.
The aircraft and their parts were not handled appropriately, thus the ENAC findings. For example, this engine mount was stored atop a rock.
Apparently, the Pan Aviation agreed to follow this procedure, but in reality, when we have checked 2 times on the field, our policy were not followed by Pan Aviation.
Many very sensitive parts with special handling requirements were torn from the planes and piled up on the tarmac. A toxic detergent not authorized for use on aeronautical components was used to clean the parts. And the required Alitalia mechanics, who were supposed to supervise the task, apparently turned their backs to such activities.
Nobody, 2 times nobody from Alitalia were there. Looking the way how this part has been stored on the container, I think probably it's better that the people from Alitalia were not there, because I think it was very embarrassing that we discovered that people competent accepted such a situation.
The harbor of Naples, Italy. Prosecutor Dr. Perinu continues his raids against Pan Aviation. In January 2002, his team seizes 3 containers of Airbus parts from Rome. The experts, Radini and Floridia, are shocked when the containers are opened. The first container stores an entire Airbus landing gear. Looking more closely, the experts find traces of severe corrosion. Everything but properly packed is container number 2. Here they find sensitive cockpit warning components thrown in a cardboard box. Its modules show corrosion damage. And while storing the engine cowling into the container, someone slightly screwed it up. Flaps and spoilers insufficient secured by nylon ropes. The third container is filled up with all kinds of different airplane parts, some removed by force. Perinu seizes the remaining 4 aircraft in Rome and 2 more containers. But the investigators missed 5 containers which already left the harbor a month ago, destined for Danby Aerospace, the company of Dan Batchelor in the United States. Around the same time, Dan Batchelor sent a fax to Fregonese. Dear Enzo, I'm aware we bought these aircraft without the proper records, but we need to try and take this a little further. We need the following on Alitalia letterhead. Bachelor needs official Alitalia documents showing traceability on the gears. Only with such paperwork they can be legally overhauled and sold in the United States. Most all of this info can be found on the papers we have on hand, but our shops require more. It would be a bargain to pay someone in the technical department $5,000 to $10,000 for them to produce these documents. It must be on their letterhead. Greensboro, North Carolina, United States. We meet Dan Bachelor. Did this smart parts broker try to bribe Alitalia employees with the help of Enzo Fregonese? This does not fit into the picture of his other activities. Mr. Bachelor normally deals with top companies.
We sell a lot to Boeing. We buy a lot from Boeing. Yeah. We're an approved vendor for them as well as Rolls-Royce. We sell quite a bit to them as well, Rolls-Royce. But our mainstay, a lot of them is overseas airlines, freight carriers. We do a tremendous amount with, like UPS and a lot of people that do sub-service for them and others.
Bachelor emphasizes the top quality within his company. So what does he intend to do with the scrap parts from Italy? Are we talking about the same subject here?
Just make sure that this.
We show him pictures from Naples and Rome.
Come over. This makes things easier. Are these the parts we're talking?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my tube.
That's the airplanes.
Hmm? Well, without a doubt, this is not the way that we would have handled the parts.
Okay.
I strongly believe that they were probably stuffed off to the side.
It seems to be somewhere inside of a container.
That's inside one of the containers, sure.
Then we show him the questionable facts.
Is this their signature?
Mm-hmm. I do.
You do?
Hmm?
What do you mean by that?
We bought the airplanes as is where is.
Mm-hmm.
We knew because of the documentation that we've seen on the web that they, and the documentation we received previously, that they had good records on all the gears. We elected to fight the battle of getting the records after we procured the airplanes,
Mm-hmm.
which we did, and we got them.
This could read differently as well. This could read that you don't have the required documentation.
That also was before we bought the airplanes.
But you told me, well, it's very easy.
If I didn't even get the landing gears with the aircraft, I would make money. With the landing gears, I make that much more.
You have documentation at hand from Alitalia.
Yes.
Can you show it to me? Do you have documentation
Yes.
for that gear?
Yes, I do.
Can you show it to me?
Is there instant or?
No, I'm just asking you.
Yes, I can show it to you. We have it here today. And this isn't...
Soon he returns with documents on Alitalia letterhead. But he does not want to give us
I'll
copies.
suggest the same thing.
And who provided this?
I'll tell you did.
Alitalia.
Sure.
To you directly when you bought the airplanes.
No, this was after we purchased the airplanes and we sucked them out of their quality department.
Okay.
This is something that they told us that we couldn't have when we purchased the aircraft. But our insistence of it, they finally relented, and I don't know why, and they didn't resist that much.
As we wrap up, a landing gear is delivered, freshly overhauled and recertified. It is one of the Alitalia Airbus gears. An unapproved part, because Alitalia objects that they never officially issued any records for it. And ENAC did inform the FAA about this fact. Furthermore, Alitalia declared that since that date, the aircraft were not monitored by Alitalia Engineering and technical records were not updated, and therefore the traceability of the installed parts is not ensured. Consequently, Alitalia declared the parts are to be considered unserviceable and their life unknown, including components having a limited life. Therefore, this gear should have never been overhauled. Although the FAA had perfect knowledge about these facts, they did nothing. Until today. Nor has there been an investigation into Mr. Bachelor's activities. But bogus parts are not exclusively received from Italy. During our research we learned that German authorities are involved in similar investigations. Oberpfaffenhofen outside Munich. the headquarters of financially ailing aircraft manufacturer Fairchild Dornier. Since 1995, expensive parts disappeared from the high-security premises. The Bavarian police and the Munich prosecutor are investigating.
Die Feststellungen ergaben, dass Mitarbeiter der Firma Dornier diese Gegenstände entwendet und dann veräußert hatten. Es waren Höhenmesser, es waren Bremsanlagen, es waren ganze Tragflächen dabei, sodass man im Grunde sagen muss, alles, was ein Flugzeug ausmacht, war dabei. Die Dokumentationen, also die Zertifikate, sind in der Tat in diesen Fällen entweder ganz falsch erstellt worden oder gefälscht worden. Wir ermitteln jetzt konkret wegen gewerbsmäßigen Diebstahl, gewerbsmäßiger Hehlerei, haben aber natürlich auch im Auge die Gefährdung des Luftverkehrs, das ist ein gesonderter gesetzlicher Straftatbestand. Einige wenige Teile sind im Ausland sichergestellt worden bei Fluggesellschaften.
Ja, also Sie sind schon wieder bei Fluggesellschaften angekommen?
Einmal in der USA, einmal in England und einmal auf den Philippinen.
Back to the Pan Aviation case. Is German flag carrier Lufthansa involved as well? In July they declare, Lufthansa and Lufthansa Technik AG did not have business relations with the Italian company Pan Aviation. Written statement by the company. A request for an interview is declined. Strange, because documents seized at the Pan Aviation hangars in Rome clearly indicate that there has been a business relation. The German Pilot Association Cockpit has long since warned. 9 years ago, Captain Bernd Kopf, the spokesperson for the union, drew attention to the problem of bogus parts.
Die Vereinigung Cockpit ist sehr besorgt über dieses Problem, und zwar deswegen, weil ich glaube, dass es ein zunehmendes Problem werden wird und wir darauf schlecht vorbereitet sind, in Deutschland und in Europa schlechthin, im Rahmen dieses gemeinsamen Marktes, der jetzt Dinge möglich macht.
Jetzt hat dieser Fall, von dem Sie sprachen, gezeigt, dass uns die Wirklichkeit eingeholt hat. Zunächst haben wir gedacht, wir leben hier so ein bisschen auf einer glücklichen Insel in Europa. Wir sind in Europa mit den Dingen, die wir damals schon gefordert haben, sehr langsam vorangekommen, speziell auf politischer Ebene, wo unser Einfluss natürlich nur begrenzt ist. Und wir haben nach wie vor keine geeignete Strafverfolgung. Wir haben noch nicht mal die Straftatbestände geschaffen, sodass also jemand, der mit diesen Teilen handelt, eigentlich nicht entsprechend dem potenziellen Risiko, was er für andere bedeutet, abgeurteilt werden kann. Wir haben es ja hier mit einer Mafia zu tun, die verbrecherisch Milliarden von Euro scheffelt, wohl wissend, dass es jederzeit zu einer Katastrophe kommen kann.
Professional pilots better than anybody else know that the safety of their passengers and their own lives depend on the integrity of their aircraft and its parts. But they lack any opportunity to cross-check what was installed in their planes. Lufthansa, which elected to appear elegantly uninvolved, faces a severe problem. Somehow Pan Aviation parts did find their way into their facilities. We are talking a total of 5 hydraulic connectors for engines belonging to their Boeing 747 jumbo jet and Airbus A300 fleets. What a pity that nobody at Lufthansa recalls exactly in which engine the parts were installed during repairs. This triggered a sharp reaction by the German authority LBA. In their letter to ENAC dated June 2002, they confirm, it has shown that Lufthansa Technik AG Hamburg has received some parts from this company and used them during repair overhaul. The parts do not pose a safety risk, but still the items are of suspect nature and must be removed from service. LBA has enforced a change of the respective part on all suspect engines under operation in Germany within the next 18 months. The generous deadline given by LBA, November 2003. 150 jet engines have now to be inspected. 100,000 euros for materials and more than 900 mechanic hours are Lufthansa's costs for this glitch. A glitch which might become dangerous, as Cockpit sees it.
Wir haben heute die Situation, dass aufgrund der wirtschaftlichen Zwänge, aufgrund der Billig-Airlines alle einschließlich großer Firmen, renommierter Firmen, gezwungen sind, überall den Rotstift anzusetzen. Und da sehen wir ein Problem, weil, wie gesagt, die Möglichkeit, diesen Handel, diesen verbrecherischen Handel, muss man sagen, mit den gefälschten Teilen niemand Einhalt gebieten kann. Und solange wir keine zuständige Behörde haben, solange wir keinen zuständigen, fachlich qualifizierten und darauf spezialisierten Ermittler haben, solange werden wir diesem Problem sicher nicht Herr werden.
Although the investigations against Pan Aviation were noticed outside Italy, only half-hearted efforts have been made to stop the bogus parts mafia. Without question, not enough has been done to secure the Italian parts from circulation.
The danger is that parts that do not correspond to the technical standard or to the way they have been maintained, preserved, could have a high potential of a failure or erratic functioning at a time that is not predictable. It's like having a time bomb on board of a plane.
Arturo Radini and Vittorio Floridia concluded their report to the prosecutor, and for the first time in Europe an identified suspect will face trial. Enzo Fregonese might get 15 years of jail, but whether the 74-year-old will ever go to prison is doubtful. The legal proceedings might take years. Those responsible for the Norwegian crash from 1989 have never been indicted so far.
It seems to me that somewhere in the system there are people seeing to it that we are not having a public, open debate on these questions that could lead us forward. And my question would be, who are they? These people, where are they? Why do they establish a kind of cartel of silence? And my final question would be, do they not have loved ones on planes?
The investigation led in Phoenix has only shown a fraction of the entire problem. Bogus parts have also been found in private and military aircraft and have caused accidents. The Italian investigators estimate that more than 1,000 aircraft are flying with unapproved parts delivered by Pan Aviation. 1,000 flying time bombs at this very moment.